This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. This show is also brought to you by our patrons. If you want to support the show in a different way, with just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. You can get a sticker. You can get access to an exclusive show that we do every month that's wild and chaotic and fun and something you can only get by becoming a member of the Patreon. There'll be so many more perks very, very soon. But for now, do you want a sticker? Do you want a sticker that has a Now This Is Lit logo? Because it's fantastic and I love them. But I also want to give them away because there's just a stack of stickers on my desk. So if you want one, $1 a month. Patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I'm actually not reading any Star Wars at the moment, which is not usually the case. But we're kind of in between books, and I needed a Legends break. So. Plus, I'm reading your book and another book that I bought in July that I want to finish.
I'm not reading Star Wars right now either.
What was the most recent Star Wars thing you read?
Wraith Squadron.
Ah, yes. And it was strictly fine, I believe.
AKA Temu Rogue Squadron.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
You're going to make some Legends fans really mad.
I know.
That's kind of like your MO, though.
Yeah. I'm mostly here to dunk on Legends. Listen, I liked what I read so far. I got through the first 4, like the actual Rogue Squadron series, and I was like, man, 4 for 4, we're on a clip. And we got to Wraith Squadron, I'm like, the slops returned.
Oh, my God.
It's back, baby.
Oh, my God.
It's like a river, like you can divert its course, but eventually it will find its way back.
You know what Star Wars book and book series you really do like, though? Light of the Jedi. The first book in the High Republic, which is what we're finally talking about today. I wanted to talk about Light of the Jedi a long time ago because the show started in 2022, which is after Light of the Jedi came out. So I missed a bunch of books in terms of like talking about them. And every once in a while every now and then we've been going back and talking about some stuff. We talked about Dark Disciple. We talked about the Aftermath trilogy. I feel like there was something else. Oh, we talked about Ronin. That was a fun episode. Talking about Ronin with someone who hated it. Listen, sometimes you can't change people's minds. Sometimes opinions are opinions and they're not going to change. And that's not the point of the series. Anyway. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we're just talking about Light of the Jedi because we never have on the show. And you and I had both read it, but it had been a while. And so we decided to reread it. And now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Would you very quickly like to reintroduce yourself for anyone who does not know who this other voice is on my podcast?
Yes. I'm Davor. I podcast in a couple different places. We have Space Swifties. I'm also a co-host over on Clashing Sabers. I'm also the producer for the show, in addition to a few other things.
Just a few.
Yes.
So we will talk about like our experience like rereading the book and like all of that. Because it's a very unique experience that we had.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to talking about that as well as talking about the book, because reading a Star Wars book is not just about the book itself, but your experience of reading it, which is something I like to talk about on the show. But first I want to go back to around the time that Light of the Jedi came out, when the High Republic was starting, and when we both read this book, because we have also different experiences of reading this book for the first time. So some things that I remember about like the time around when this book came out is that it was delayed.
Yes.
The High Republic was supposed to start in 2020. I don't remember exactly when, but it was supposed to start in 2020, and it was delayed and started in January 2021, which was actually a great way to start the year. Not the worst thing in the world. I remember the day that Light of the Jedi came out, it was trending on Twitter, which was wild to see. Because the excitement for the new era was also just something I hadn't seen in Star Wars books before, as far as when I'd been around. And for me, and then, after you can talk about your experience too, but for me, I'd been following the High Republic since before we knew it was the High Republic. So they were talking about this whole Project Luminous thing. No one knew what it was. And then in February 2020, like right before the entire world fell apart, I remember it was like one of the last good things, that ended up happening for a while. They announced that it was the High Republic, and it was this whole publishing initiative that was going to be like across different storytelling mediums, and it was going to be really cool. And Light of the Jedi ended up being the first book that I got to read an early review copy of. And I remember reading it and having this surreal experience of finishing it and going, oh, I can't talk about this book with anyone outside of like the other people who have already read it. I have to be quiet on Twitter, which at the time was a very difficult thing for me to do, but I did it. So I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, we can like finally start talking about it. So I'd already read it. So it had been a while since I read it before. I think I reread it last year, but whether or not I comprehended all of it is debatable, but that's a whole other thing. What about you?
Yeah, so, you just mentioned when Light of the Jedi released in January of 2021. I didn't think about it until just now, just the overlap of it, but you just kind of situating it in time that makes me think that book came out around the same time I think that WandaVision premiered.
Oh, man.
And I just sort of think about those two. Obviously, the releases being coincidental, and one was supposed to come out a lot sooner than the other. Mm-hmm. But I was just thinking about sort of that moment in terms of we're coming out of the doldrums of 2020, and then you've got this new book series starting on the Star Wars side, and then you have the first Marvel Disney Plus show starting on the Marvel side, and that obviously generating a lot of enthusiasm. So, this real kind of pick-me-up coming out of this very terrible year.
Yeah.
On these two different fronts. So, yeah, the book came out. I don't remember exactly when I started it. It wouldn't have been... I don't think it was right when it came out. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly... I was reading it in the spring. I know that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly when I started it or when I picked up my copy. That was back when I was still reading physical books. Yeah. I hadn't really kind of made the transition over to audiobooks just yet. And I remember part of my, and I think I've talked about this maybe a little bit on here or maybe on Patreon. I don't remember exactly. Part of my motivation why I really wanted to revisit Light of the Jedi at some point was because I was reading it at the same time that a lot of other stuff was happening. In particular, I was closing on the house we're now living in. And I actually remember, maybe it was the day of or around that, I remember having my copy of Light of the Jedi here. Because I was here, and I think it must have been the day I closed, because I was waiting for someone to come. I think it was somebody who was going to come and measure for new doors, and they were going to measure the dimensions of the doorway. And I remember having the copy of Light of the Jedi, and I was sitting on the little steps that go from the dining room into the living room, and I was there reading. And I think I even remember the section. I think I was reading... I think it was the scene where it's the Jedi and they're talking with the Republic, the Defense Coalition.
Okay,
like some of those guys, and they're sort of debating about like should the Jedi get involved and et cetera, some of that stuff. And so I think I was reading that part because I think I feel like I remember reading some of the Yariel stuff,
yeah.
And I think he's part of that seed in that conversation. But anyway, because there was all that stuff kind of happening, the book was a little bit secondary.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really able to kind of devote my attention to it maybe the way that I wanted to. I mean, I did enjoy it, but again, there were so many other things happening. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to go back to it, in addition to just being able to experience the beginning with the full context of everything that we've known since then.
Right. Yeah, I've had that experience too, where like I'm reading a Star Wars book and I'm not really enjoying it, but it ends up being, I'm just reading it at the wrong time in my life.
Yeah.
I talked about that with Heir to the Jedi. I think I also talked about it when we were doing the Ronin episode, when I did that with Brandon. Sometimes like the reason I want to revisit certain books is because I just read it at the wrong time for me. Mm-hmm. Because you don't really think about how much your surroundings and your current like happenings affect how you read a book. I think it happens to me more often than I realize. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm really not enjoying this book. And I think about it. I'm like, is it just not a good time for me to be reading this book?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a thing that's possible. So originally when I reread this book, it was either last year or the year before, I don't remember which. I had wanted to do a revisiting of this book and I wanted to do an episode, and for various reasons it just didn't happen. So we're doing it now.
Yeah.
And in order to prepare for that, we did reread it. We ended up rereading it together. Do you want to talk about kind of that experience we had a little bit? Because it's a little bit unique.
Yes. So as I said, I had resolved for a long time that I wanted to revisit Light of the Jedi. And then particular, just because the timing of it all worked out, I wanted to do it after Trials of the Jedi. I figured with that book coming out, it was now sort of the perfect time to go back to the beginning, because we would have had the full context. We would have had the entire story done. And so what we did is back in June, we had a road trip, and we had a lot of time, a lot of listening time. And so we did a back-to-back listen of Light of the Jedi and then Trials of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. It was really interesting.
Yes.
So let's start there and let's talk about that. Because I think I mentioned this on Patreon very, very briefly. I think that's when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was the reading resolutions.
Yeah.
So it wasn't on Patreon, but go listen to that episode too, because it's really good. There were things from Light of the Jedi that connected back to Trials that I didn't pick up on until we re-listened to it right after Trials. Or was it the other way around?
Yeah. Or something like that. Or, well, because we listened to them in order. So we listened to Light first and then Trials.
Yeah, same thing applies. There were connections between the two that I didn't really pick up on because, one, we didn't have Trials, and two, I hadn't read the book in a long time.
Yeah.
And it really, like, that and a lot of other things really solidified for me, like, the fact that they are literally the bookends of the series. Mm-hmm. And it works so well. Not just because it's the same author, but because it's the whole thing starts with Light of the Jedi, which we're going to talk about today, and it ends with Trials. But something that Trials had to accomplish and did so very well, which I talked about in my review, was kind of pulling everything together at the end, using all of the stories that come between Light of the Jedi and this one. It really has to be acknowledged, like, how impressive of a feat that was.
Yeah.
I know we haven't talked about Trials on the show, like, in depth, and maybe we will at some point. We'll see. But yeah, where do you want to start with this? I'm trying to think.
Well, you were talking. You were just alluding to it now, and we can go into detail on that. But talking about some of those parallels or some of the things that stood out. Yeah,
because, like, for me, like, the one thing that comes to mind at the moment is, like, her going to the the top of the mountain on Coruscant.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't remember the significance of that in Light of the Jedi, but it does happen, and then it becomes so much more symbolic when it comes back in Trials, because it happened in Trials, and when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, not remembering that that it had happened in Light of the Jedi. That's like one big example for me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think I mentioned this example before too, but then there's the whole thing with Bell and Loden, and there's the test of him having to jump out of the ship and all of that, and catching himself, and then that ends up sort of becoming salient too at the end of not at the end of, but in Trials.
Yeah, right. Right. There's like little things like that where it's like if you're reading Trials and haven't read Light of the Jedi in a while, which was the case with us, it's not like not having read that in a while like changes the way you read Trials, but it's like when you're able to go back, you understand more like how important those connections are.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other examples. Not coming to mind at the moment. Like one thing that like one criticism, quote unquote, that I heard a lot when the book came out and people started reading it, and I understand where they're coming from, is there are just a lot of characters and a lot of different moving parts. And I think for me, like we reread this, listened to it in June, and it's September, and I've already forgotten a lot of the little details just because there's so much to remember.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the parts of the experience for me was there was so much of this book I did not remember.
Yeah.
There was so much that happened, and I'm like, okay, sure. Am I reading the expanded edition here? Is this a different version? I blanked on so much.
Yeah. Well, that is like the hard thing about a book like this is like we talk about how much of a feat Trials was, but so was Light of the Jedi. And the reason that there's like so much, there's so many characters, there's so many different events and moving parts, and everything's connected, obviously. And it's a very, very good book. But it has to establish an entirely new era in Star Wars that we've never seen before, that wasn't, like in Legends.
Yeah.
This is not something that's like existed before. There's no material to go off of. This is all original. And so it's one of those books, like, because it's the start of what's going to be this 3-phase series, it has to do a lot of work to set everything up. But it has to do it in a way where it's like it's telling also an intriguing story and not just like exposition the entire book, you know? Because that wouldn't be good. So it does that but it introduces you to the politics and the characters and the main players and everything in such a good way. But there's a lot to do. There's a lot stuffed into this book. And I understand why some people might like struggle with that because it's a lot. But it kind of has to be that way.
Yeah.
There really was no other way to do it. And, like the other books that came out around this time, like A Test of Courage came out the same day.
Wow.
The middle grade one. And so like, the same it's the situation where the same events are happening just from like a different place, different perspectives, things like that. So that did a little bit of like establishing some different things. But again, Light of the Jedi being the adult novel it just has to do a lot.
Yeah.
And I think Charles Soule was like a very good person to choose to take on that task. Not that any of the other ones couldn't do it. Oh, sorry, sweet girl. But you can tell that like he really, really put a lot of effort into both trying to tell this really, really good story and introducing this entirely new era at the same time. So it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
But something that like because of that, this book ends up being a really good starting point for anyone who wants to get into Star Wars books
Yes.
Because you don't have to know anything about Star Wars or the characters or anything going in. This is like meant to be, you can start here because there's nothing you need to know. It ends up being one of those things where, like, if you've read other Star Wars books, it's fun to, like, think about, like, oh, like, here we are now in this time period, but, like, 100, 200, however many years later, we're at this different point, and how do we get there, things like that. But, like, you don't have to have that prior knowledge at all.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It's nice to be able to recommend a starting point for Star Wars books. It's not like Lost Stars, you know? There's a different option. Because it's the start of a completely new thing within Star Wars, which is, of course, not new. But that's something I love about the books, is they can establish all these new things that feel new, that make Star Wars exciting. That was something else that, like, I remember when I was first reading this book, and I haven't really, like, taken a lot of time to think deeply about this, but I remember reading it. I remember going, like, this feels like Star Wars to me. Like, there was something about, like, because I was not worried. But, you know, when there's something new like this on the horizon, you're always like, oh, is it going to be the Star Wars that I know and love? And, like, is it going to resonate with me in the same way?
Yeah.
And, like, I don't remember what point I got to, but I do remember having this moment of, like, oh, like, this is pure Star Wars.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was, like, the battles or the, you know, I don't know what it was.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I think we've had this conversation on the show a little bit. That was one of my challenges when I got to what was it, 2 years ago or whatever, when I read Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void.
Yeah.
A book that also goes back in time, but I mean, I'll be even like much farther back than the High Republic.
Literally the Dawn of the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. From the Star Wars as we've known it in the movies, is that like one of my big challenge with that book is, like, it's so different.
Yeah, right.
Like the Jedi, the context of the galaxy, it's so far removed from how we understand Star Wars that it was hard to like connect it as being part of, you know, the same galaxy in the same time. And so that was the nice thing about, yeah, like you said, I think one of the strengths of the High Republic. I mean, one thing that is definitely admirable about the High Republic is that it gives us Jedi and the Jedi Order, but in ways that are quite different from the Jedi that we know them.
Right.
Or as we've known them. And that's important, because you don't want to feel like hundreds of years have passed and it's just been the same order.
Right.
And that nothing has changed.
Right.
And that you do definitely feel, and I think you feel it from the first page, like the first pages, or like from the first book, in the sense that, you know, we're introduced to, yeah. Or again, this is another thing, like, who is in these books? As I discovered, Stellan Gios is not in Light of the Jedi.
Yeah, he's like in one scene or
except
something.
for a cameo at the dedication of Starlight, where Mark Thompson calls him Stellian Gios.
What? I forgot about that.
We rewinded that part because it was like, I did like a
yeah.
Did he say that? And he calls him Stellian Gios.
Wasn't there like a couple other things that they called them different things?
Well, there's obviously Marcion. Because he doesn't become Markion, I think, until it's a Lost Star, Fallen Star.
I need some background on why this happened.
And then Nihil.
Nihil.
Also.
Yeah.
The hard H on Nihil, as opposed to then they become Nile later on.
That's so interesting to me.
Yeah, it is interesting. Those, like, they're still figuring things out.
Yeah,
and it's great that is captured. But Orla Jarani is in this book. Yes. But anyway, what I was saying is, like, the notion of Wayseekers, for example, that being a thing, like us not having had that prior to the High Republic, of these people who, they're Jedi, they're still in the Order. It's not a Dooku situation. They haven't left, but they're on this very different path from being institutionally within the Order.
Right.
So you have things like that by the time we get to the prequels doesn't exist anymore. Introducing the notion of Jedi experiencing the Force in different ways.
Yes.
You know,
That's something
Yes.
that I loved. I was like, oh, the Force is a song? Like, excuse me?
yes, because again, that was a thing that we didn't know before.
Yeah.
And that was a context, and I remember getting introduced to that through Light of the Jedi, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then just wondering, because obviously we get the different, Avar Chris, it's the song. With Elzar, it's the waves, right? Bell, it's fire. I think Loden, it's wind, right? Like all these different ways. And then you think about all the characters that we've had in Star Wars, and you're like, what is it like to Yoda?
Oh,
what is it like to the Emperor?
Yeah.
Like all these other characters, like how are they experiencing?
Oh, the Emperor, it's lightning.
Oh, probably.
For
yes.
sure.
Yes, exactly. So like that was really interesting. The way that they connect, right? When Avar has that moment and she like brings all the Jedi together to stop the emergence. So all of that stuff, like all of this added context, and obviously, of course, the golden robes, and then I alluded to it before, but all the conversations where the Republic Defense Coalition, the Republic is talking about involving the Jedi in fighting the Nile, and they're like, they're pumping the brakes, like we're so far even from a Geonosis Clone Wars situation. Like it's a much more milder intervention. This is like, whoa, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Should we be doing that? I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And so all that's really interesting to see where they're at.
Yeah. The other thing that stuck out to me the first time I read it, and like it still does, is like the other way of establishing how different the Order is in like them being like the Padawan's masters, for example, like encouraging them to like explore their emotions or like acknowledge that like they have feelings and they should feel them.
Yeah. I don't remember if this is in this book, but I don't. It may not be, but the fact that there's more than one Grand Master.
Yes.
I don't know if is that in Light.
I don't remember. Again, that's one of those like
Yeah.
little details.
Yeah. But I mean, even that at some point gets established. There's multiple Grand Masters.
Yeah.
It's not just Yoda.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all these different things about the Order. I mean, even about the galaxy. Obviously, a big part of this story being centered around hyperspace and all that, and we discover that it's still, I mean, which is an interesting thing to think about the galaxy, that it's still sort of relatively youngish technology.
Yeah.
In the sense that obviously they're using hyperspace and all that, but there's still a lot that they don't understand in terms of the mechanics and how it works. And then there's obviously all the stuff about the paths and the way that the Nile are using it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like realizing all this stuff that we kind of take for granted, and it's just like, oh, the ship just goes in light speed or whatever.
Yeah.
They're still kind of, it's still a little bit newfangled for them, and they're still kind of trying to make sense of it all.
Which becomes even more interesting in Phase 2.
Yes.
Because you're even further back, and there's even more stuff about like how they're not even as far along as in terms of figuring out
the
how
Pathfinders and all that stuff.
Yeah. But this is a really good book for like establishing that, because you're like, oh, like hyperspace, like, you know, you think about like A New Hope, like they just go into hyperspace and it's not that big of a deal. But here it's like, it's so much more complicated.
Yeah. Where they're literally having a conversation about like, what is hyperspace?
Yeah.
And that it's basically, I forget exactly, because Kevin Tarr is like the wunderkind, you know, who's like figuring all this out. It's like basically like a different dimension of space. Like you enter like a different plane of existence.
Yeah.
That's like you're not in the same like and not I was gonna say same reality. Almost seems like multiversal, which is not quite it.
Yeah.
But it's like you literally slip into a different dimension. Of space. And so that's really neat.
Yeah. This book just like there's so many little things that you could point out. And I'd be able to do more of that if we had been able to do this in June.
Yeah. And I mean, like we get, for example, like the Santecas. Like we get Lore Santeca obviously in Force Awakens and introduced, and then now we kind of go back in time and we discover them as sort of this very prominent family in the galaxy and all of that.
Right. I remember seeing the Force Awakens and I'm like, are we supposed to know who this guy is?
Yeah.
It's like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Because that was when I'd been out of Star Wars for a minute,
right?
And so I was watching Force Awakens, and I'm like, I missed something.
Yeah, no, you're a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Yeah, who's that guy?
Crix Madine? Is that you? Like, like you don't know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you've kind of forgotten, but that's I love that little bit. I mean, this is something I think I remember from Light of the Jedi, but it's that element where the I forget their names, but like the two Santekas, like who sort of like run the family, like they're brought in and they're like the Jedi and stuff, and the Republic are asking them questions about like hyperspace and like, can anybody do this? And they're like, no, we don't know about it. And then they'll walk away and they're like, fuck, like shit, like it's her. Like,
oh my God.
that's a really good moment in that book when they're trying to play it off and they're like, oh no, like, like could it be her? Like, no, she's dead. Like it's gone. Like it's like 200 years ago. Like it couldn't have been her.
Oh my God. I think the book does like such a good job of establishing the villain of this whole series. Like who's Marchion? We don't know. And like you don't find out a ton about him, but you find out enough that you're like, this dude is kind of weird. Like I'm kind of into it.
That was another thing that I kind of memory hold was a lot of the early NTIL stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I remembered Lorna D and Pan Ada and, the Tempest Runners and all of that. But then there was a lot of the stuff in terms of, especially around Marchion and the fact of like him being the one to be like, no, like we can't attack the Jedi directly. Like we got to be like, we got to kind of stay like off to the side.
Yeah.
Like it's too early. We can't just be out there in the open. They're going to wipe us out. Like I've forgotten all of that stuff. A lot of the kind of inside NTIL politics stuff.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah. All of that I had memory hold.
Yeah.
Because I just, so much of my memory is all the stuff that comes after the fair, Starlight, and it's like him being like, out on center stage, like I'm Marchion Ro, all of that stuff. But then him being much more kind of cautious and calculating this early on, where all the other ones are like, they just want to take the fight to the Republic. And he's being like, if we do that now, they're going to wipe us out.
Right.
We got to be more careful.
Right.
I'd forgotten that side to him.
I really like how, much like Palpatine, he's playing a long game, but he's not Palpatine. It's not just like a copy and paste of a villain we've already seen before. Because that was really important, too, in establishing the High Republic, is like creating an enemy that's not just like everything we've already seen before. Because that just would have been kind of tiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's done so well because you have the NTIL, which are like not even like an official like organized organization. I mean, they have like, they're organized to a point, but also kind of not. And you're like, oh, like these like pirates or whatever you want to call them, like can't take on the Republic.
Yeah.
Like, what do they think they're doing? And then obviously get further down in the series and all the other things happen. But because I remember like, I sometimes have a hard time with like the antagonist point of view. Mm-hmm. In Star Wars books, for some reason, it's just like it. I want to kind of skip over it. I don't know what it is. But not the case with this book because it's so new and interesting and different than what we've seen before in a lot of ways. And I like it. I do. Oh, the other thing I forgot about is how they just straight up released the first 8 chapters.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And you're reading and you're like, oh my God, like what is this? That was wild. I mean, to be fair, there are like a bunch of chapters in this book, so it's like, it's basically nothing. But
yeah,
for them to just like release all of that, I think to everyone, I think it was just free.
Yeah.
Which like it was a great like marketing for the series because of course the first 8+ chapters are just like are gonna break your soul. Definitely gets you to want to read more, which was the whole point. But oh God, I forgot about that because I was thinking about the beginning and I was like, oh, like I like this character who's like trying to like he has these goals and ambitions. No, actually, now he's dead.
Yeah. I remember reading the prologue at the very least ahead of time.
Yeah.
I remember when that published.
Oh, God, yeah. It really makes you think about, like, now that they've done the High Republic and they've not only tried this new thing where they establish this whole new era and do all the storytelling and bring in all these writers, but you can, like, as you followed the series, you could tell they were learning as they were going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that, like, the first phase or whatever is, like, not good.
Yeah.
It's just that you, like, everything from, like, the release schedule to, like, you know, there are things along the way where you could tell they were like, oh, like, maybe we could try it this way instead. And you were kind of following that if you followed the series as it was coming out. And I guess if you went back, you could, like, pick up on some things. But particularly the release schedule, where, like, in phase 3, like, maybe we shouldn't release, like, all of the books in this wave within, like, a month of each other. Maybe that's not a great idea.
Yeah, especially after phase 2.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. That was... See, they learned. But I am very interested. I know I've said this before every time we've talked about the High Republic on the show. I'm interested to see if and when they do this kind of thing again, whether they'll do similar kinds of things in the lead up to it or, like, different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, was it a good idea to release the first 8 chapters, or are we not going to do that again? You know, because it's like the other thing about that is, like, this was such a new thing that publishing hadn't done in the last 5, however many years. They've done it, so, like, can they do it again? And what is it going to look like? You know, because we know they're going to do some stuff that's new and different, because they kind of have to.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just like you're always going to have your sanctuaries and your Glass Abyss and your books that are set at different points in the timeline that are just standalone things. You're always going to have that, because that Star Wars books have always been like that. But then you're probably going to have things that are more like the High Republic, maybe not to that big of a scale. Or then you have things like the Reign of the Empire trilogy, just, like, slotted in there. It's really fun. I will say, though, like, something I have noticed just over the past few months is, like, it's weird without more High Republic stuff coming out. Like, the comics are done.
Yeah.
We obviously had gaps between when one High Republic book would come out and the next one would, but there was always that anticipation of, oh, this next book is coming out this month, I'm so excited. And now we don't have that. It's weird.
Yeah, it's just over.
It's weird. It's like, and they've said that there'll be more High Republic stuff of some kind down the road. But to like think about how, like, the 3-phase major initiative project that they did for 4 years, if you don't count, like, all the lead up to it, it's done. It's still weird to me. It's only September. It hasn't been that long, but it's still weird. I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, it is odd.
It is. But I guess also with publishing, you just never really know what they're going to announce just out of nowhere, like at New York Comic Con in November or something.
Right.
Like, it's like, what?
I mean, if there is another, and I think we've gotten enough hints to this point that basically there is something else. There is some other large publishing initiative in the works.
Yeah.
I think, like, Michael Siglain and others have kind of indicated as much.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a while.
Yes.
Not just because these things naturally have a long runway to them, but I think also they're gonna want to let this sit.
Yeah.
And then give it some time, and then not just wallop you with, coming 2026, like, I don't know, Old Republic, or, like, whatever it is.
Well, and the other thing is, like, because I found this out from Claudia Gray, which is wild, because I didn't know that, like, there are a bunch of people who were deliberately waiting until the High Republic ended to start it. Like, they wanted to have it all established before they started reading all of it.
It's just wild.
And, God, I don't... People
you thought reading the New Jedi Order, as it was coming out, like all in one swoop was a lot.
Oh my God. But, like, you also have to give people time to do that.
Yes.
You can't just, like, end the High Republic and be like, here's this next thing. People are going to get tired of that.
Yeah.
You have to be like conscious of that, and they are.
Right.
But the other thing is like we know that like they were working on the High Republic for a long time before we even knew about it.
Right.
So like they're probably in that stage now, where like they're gonna tell us that something is happening to keep like the interest up, but they're probably just if there even are, they probably just started the early stages of working on that. So it's gonna be a minute, which honestly is not the worst thing because I'm excited for things like The Last Order and Master of Evil and whatever Mike Chen's book is called. I can never remember what it's called.
Red Moon Dawn, Red Dead Redemption, something like that. I don't know what it is.
God, I'll get there. I'll remember. I finally got The Last Order. It took me forever to figure out what that book was called. And then whenever the next Reign of the Empire book is and whatever that one is, I don't know. I'm excited for like just a little bit of a slowdown and enjoying the comics. And going back and to read some Legends and just having a little bit of time because, like, I loved the High Republic. It was exhausting. It was exhausting just following it as a reader. And then when I started covering it, it was like, oh, my God. Oh, my God. There's more. It's so good, though. And this is a great way to start it. And I wish I had been doing the podcast when it started because imagine that. Imagine like being able to talk about like how excited we were for the High Republic on the show. But ideally, we'll be able to do that with a different publishing initiative down the road. Assuming we're still doing the show and it actually happens. This is fun.
It was, yeah.
If you are one of those people who decided to wait until the High Republic was over to start reading it and you haven't started Light of the Jedi yet, I know it can seem intimidating to like want to start this whole new series, but like start with Light of the Jedi and just let yourself have fun with it because it's good. It's a lot, but you're going to need all that stuff for when you keep reading. And the nice thing is that like you get an adult novel, but then you can read some like middle grade and young adult, which are not lesser than in any way. It's just like middle grade, for example, is shorter. So you get a little bit of like a palate cleanser is what I like to call them. Because they're a little bit more lighthearted in terms of like tone and sometimes theme. Still High Republic, still like bad things are happening, but it's a little bit less doom and gloom.
Yeah.
So those are nice. And you don't have to read all of it at once. You can take your time. I really want, if you're out there listening and you're someone who is planning on reading the entire High Republic now that it's over, when you're done, I want to have you on the show. I need to know what your experience is like because I did not have this experience and I kind of want to know. Like, yeah, I'm very interested in that. She mentioned that in our interview and I was like, I didn't like dwell on it, but in my head I was like, are you kidding? Like, people are doing that? Like, people are waiting? Like, how can you wait? You got a lot to read.
I know. This is just a wild way to do it.
Like, if you were theoretically also going to do the comics, which
yeah.
I went back earlier this year and I went back and finished all the High Republic comics I hadn't read yet, which was still a lot, despite having read a chunk of them. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. And again, I'm not saying you have to read all of it. And you don't have to like speed through it. Actually, I would recommend that you don't do that. If my new Jedi Order experience is any indication. Good luck, I guess. I don't know. I miss the High Republic, but the good thing is we can still talk about it on the show. We can still go back and talk about it in different ways. And that's fun.
Yes,
and
agreed.
we love that. Thanks for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
We've been saying we wanted to do it for a while, and we finally did.
We did.
For Light and Life.
For Light and Life, baby.
Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Davor Montum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show on Substack at Now This Is Lit, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. There are so many ways you can support the show, and all of those ways are linked in the show description. The newest way is to become a member of our Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to an exclusive show and a sticker. And if we get 500 people to support the Patreon per month, I can hire an editor. That would be great for me, and maybe for you too. So if you'd like to support the show with just $1 a month, you can do it that way. Or you can just keep listening and sharing the episodes. That is also helpful, and I appreciate it. For more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram and TikTok.